All right, so we're diving deep into this whole import-export specialist thing. And I gotta be honest, when you first sent me that RoleCatcher career guide, I was like, wood? Really? I mean, it's not exactly the most, thrilling thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I get it.
But then I actually started reading it, and man, this guide really opens your eyes to, the bigger picture of what's actually involved in this whole world.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's way more than just, knowing about different types of wood.
Right. It's not just about the wood itself.
No, not at all. It
Uh,
gets into, all the skills you need, the challenges you face, how technology's changing things. There's even stuff about career paths and what to expect in an interview.
yeah.
They really did their research.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I had this image in my head of someone stuck in an office all day, just, pushing paper. But this guide makes it clear that you're actually a vital link in this massive, global supply chain.
Totally. You're the one making sure things run smoothly, that everything gets where it needs to be, when it needs to be there.
Exactly. And it's not just about logistics, right? The guide talked about understanding customs regulations, spotting trends in the industry, even helping businesses avoid risks. That's a lot of responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more at stake than people realize.
So you're not just dealing with wood, you're dealing with the whole ecosystem of construction.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, think about it. Sourcing sustainable timber,
Yeah.
navigating the complexities of international trade, making sure materials get to these massive projects on time and in the right place. It's a lot to juggle,
That sounds intense and, like you said, way more high stakes than people might think.
for sure. It's not just about knowing your wood. It's about understanding the entire world of construction.
Okay, so you're basically like a construction logistics ninja. That's way cooler than I pictured.
Something like that. And, speaking of skills, the guide highlights some really interesting ones. Obviously, knowing trade laws is a must.
Right, of course.
But it also emphasized active listening and cultural sensitivity. It even mentions geography. I mean, I guess it makes sense when you think about it.
It does,
Yeah,
especially when you're dealing with suppliers and officials from all over the world, right?
exactly. We're talking about building relationships, understanding cultural differences, navigating different ways of doing business.
Yeah, it's like you can't just send an email and expect everything to go perfectly, right? You have to really understand the human side of things.
100%. And that's where that specialist part really comes in.
Yeah.
You're not just dealing with logistics, you're bridging cultural gaps, building trust, and understanding the nuances of different markets. It's a much more people-focused role than you might expect.
Yeah.
And here's where things get even more interesting. The guide also mentioned AI and automation starting to play a bigger role in the field.
Really?
Yeah, they even talked about their own AI-powered tools, for things like optimizing your CV and even prepping for interviews.
Wow, AI and wood imports. That's definitely not where I thought this was going. So is that becoming the norm for the industry now?
It's definitely a growing trend. This whole industry, in logistics in general, it's all becoming so data-driven.
That makes sense.
Like being able to use technology for efficiency, for compliance.
Yeah.
It's not really optional anymore. It's becoming essential.
So I guess it's not just about attracting people with traditional trade backgrounds then. You need some serious tech skills to stay competitive.
Oh, for sure. And, that actually ties into something else the guide emphasized, lifelong learning. It's not enough to just learn the ropes and coasts. You've got to be constantly, evolving your skills as technology evolves.
Right, always be learning.
Exactly. The people who really thrive in this field, they're the ones who are adaptable and always eager to learn new things.
That makes sense. Speaking of adapting, the guide had some pretty intense interview questions, stuff I wouldn't have even thought of, like how you'd handle international negotiations or how you'd stay on top of all the constantly changing regulations. I gotta be honest, it all sounded a little intimidating.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a demanding field. There's no way around it. But that being said, the guide does a good job of providing a roadmap, so to speak. They highlight the value of certifications, things like the CITP, the CCS, and others, and they stress the importance of, like we said, continuous learning.
So it's about constantly looking for new knowledge and really diving deep into those complexities so you can confidently navigate this global industry, huh?
Exactly. It's not for everyone, but for the right person, it can be incredibly rewarding.
Speaking of rewarding work, one thing that really stood out to me in the guide was how much it talked about sustainability.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge focus in the industry now, and it's only going to get bigger.
Right. So I was thinking, could this role, this import-export specialist, could they actually be on the leading edge of making the whole industry more eco-friendly.
I definitely think that's a possibility. I mean, think about it. You're not just dealing with moving goods around.
You're thinking about where they're coming from.
Yeah. You need to be aware of things like sustainable forestry, the environmental impact of shipping, even all the regulations around importing recycled materials.
Oh, for sure.
It's a lot to keep track of.
So an import-export specialist could actually push businesses to adopt those more sustainable practices, by making those options more accessible, maybe even more financially attractive.
Exactly. Imagine like you're negotiating a deal and sourcing sustainably harvested timber. It isn't just like a bonus. It's a key part of the agreement.
I like it.
Or maybe you're able to like advise a company on how to navigate those import regulations for a new eco-friendly building material.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's about having a real, tangible impact.
And that goes back to what the guide said about staying on top of industry trends, right? It's not enough to just know the rules of the game as they are now. You have to, anticipate what they'll be in the future.
It's about always thinking a few steps ahead. Maybe 5 years down the line, bamboo's going to be the hottest construction material because it's sustainable and it grows so fast.
Interesting.
So an import-export specialist who sees that coming, who's been paying attention, they can position themselves and their company for success while also promoting those more responsible practices.
It's almost like there's this layer of ethical responsibility being added to the job that wasn't there before.
100%. And honestly, I think that's a huge draw for people, especially, younger generations who are looking for careers that align with their values.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned certifications earlier, and I gotta admit, I'm a little lost. The guide listed a whole bunch of them: CITP, CCS, CES, CLSCP. It's like alphabet soup.
Mm.
What does it all mean, for someone who's actually considering this as a career path?
Yeah, no, I hear you. It can definitely seem overwhelming, but I think it gets to a really important point. Becoming an import-export specialist, it's not just about getting that job. It's about constantly building your expertise and proving you can handle those complexities. And these certifications, they're how you do that. They show employers that you're serious about professional development and that you have a deep understanding of really specific areas within the field.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So, break it down for me. What's the difference between a CITP and a CCS, for example? And how do those actually help someone in their career? Okay, so those certifications, they're clearly important, but what do they actually mean, in the real world? How do they translate into actual skills and, career advancement?
Well, they can make a huge difference. I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
Let's see. You want to know about the CITP and the CCS?
Yeah, those ones especially.
Okay, so the CITP, that stands for Certified International Trade Professional, and it's a big deal. I mean, it's recognized globally and shows you've got a solid understanding of all things international trade.
Gotcha.
We're talking Incoterms, customs regulations, risk management, all of that.
Yeah.
It's basically telling employers, hey, I can handle the complexities of global trade, no problem.
So it's kind of the gold standard for anyone in import-export, no matter what specific products they're working with.
Exactly. It's all about those core principles that apply across the board. Now, the CCS, that's Certified Customs Specialist, and that one goes super deep into U.S. customs regulations specifically.
That sounds incredibly detailed.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. But that kind of expertise, it's seriously valuable. Someone with a CCS, they can help companies avoid those costly delays, those penalties, by making sure all their goods clear customs without a hitch.
So it's all about minimizing risk and maximizing efficiency in that, very specific world of customs regulations.
Gotcha. Okay, what about the other two you mentioned, the CES and the CLSCP? What do those even stand for, and who should be looking into those?
Okay, so CES, that's Certified Export Specialist. Pretty straightforward, right? It's really focused on that export side of the business. If you're really into the ins and outs of sending goods overseas, this is your thing. It covers everything from export controls and licensing requirements to, just navigating all those other key regulations that are specific to exporting.
Makes sense. It sounds like a good option for someone who really wants to, specialize in that part of the business. Okay, what about that last one, the CLSCP? That one sounds super broad from the name alone.
It is pretty broad, you're right. CLSCP stands for Certified Logistics and Supply Chain Professional, and basically it shows you have this expertise in managing that entire flow of goods. We're talking everything from sourcing and procurement to transportation and warehousing. It even gets into reverse logistics, so it's really the whole shebang. So that could be a good fit for an import-export specialist who wants to, move into a more managerial role, maybe where they're overseeing those bigger supply chain operations for a company.
Exactly. It might not be, directly related to just imports and exports, but it's definitely a valuable thing to have on your resume, on your LinkedIn, whatever,
Right.
shows you have that broader understanding of how everything fits together, the whole supply chain picture.
So these certifications, they're not just like pieces of paper or something to brag about. They're showing potential employers that you're serious about your career, that you've got the knowledge to back it up, and that you're ready to handle whatever challenges come up in this constantly changing field.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not just getting a certificate, you're making an investment in your career and in your ability to bring real value to the companies you work with.
And speaking of value, one thing from the guide that stuck with me was the importance of networking. Like, it's not just about what you know, it's also about who you know,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's true in any field, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's especially true in import-export.
Yeah.
Having strong relationships with your suppliers, with freight forwarders, with customs brokers, it makes a world of difference. Those connections are gold.
It's a good reminder that this is a business built on people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, not just products and paperwork.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because when those inevitable challenges pop up, and they always do in international trade, it's those relationships, the ones built on trust and understanding, that can really help you navigate those tricky situations.
So it sounds like this whole career path, this import-export specialist, it's really about like connecting the world in a way, facilitating that flow of goods, but also understanding that behind every shipment, there's this whole network of people, cultures, businesses, all working together to make it happen.
It really is. It's a career that can have a huge impact. I mean, a truly global impact.
Yeah.
And for someone who's got the right skills, the knowledge, and that passion, that drive, it can be an incredibly rewarding career.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've done a deep dive into this whole world of being an import-export specialist, specifically in, wood and construction materials. It's definitely way more dynamic and honestly way more interesting than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah. Who knew that wood could be so exciting?
Right. We're talking about navigating complex regulations, using cutting-edge technology, really understanding those global markets, and even promoting sustainability.
It's a field that's constantly evolving, which, means there are tons of challenges, but also tons of opportunities for those who are willing to really dive in and, like we said, never stop learning.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, this actually sounds like me, this sounds like something I could be into, well, maybe this is your sign. Especially if you thrive in those fast-paced environments where you're constantly learning new things. If you love the idea of being globally connected and you're looking for a career where you can have a real tangible impact on the world, this could be it. This could be the perfect fit for you.
And, hey, maybe you'll be the one who revolutionizes the entire industry, making it even more efficient, even more sustainable, even more interconnected. The future is yours to shape.
Now there's a thought to leave you with. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, happy diving.